I know not just Commissioner Williams, but others probably have a hard stop for some other things. So good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you. And while I was saying that it didn't get quite as warm as they said it was going to get today, I looked out the window and now the sun's popping out. So we might get up to 60 yet. So that would be nice. Just a couple of things on my part, and then I will turn things over to Secretary Fielder. One, the agenda, you can see it's pretty straightforward. After we do committee reports, we'll have 3 reports from Academic Affairs and then proposed amendment to Komar that we need to approve. Recently, Secretary Fielder and I had an invitation to meet with the midterm presidents and their staff. We did that, I want to say a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, I lose track of time. And they generally just wanted to hear us talk about MHEC's work, a little bit about whatever we could share about the Department of Legislative Services review of their program approval process. As you know, there's an RFP out on that for a consultant to conduct that work, but probably more than anything, it was just a chance to be with them, maintain a good relationship that already exists, and just enhance it a little bit. So I think we were both really pleased with the meeting. And a reminder to commissioners, so I don't forget to do this at the end, that we do have a special meeting November 30th for the exceptions hearing, and that's at 10 a.m. So I will appreciate everybody being there if you can attend that meeting. And with that, Secretary Fielder, let me turn things over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the quick thing, MICUA was a very good meeting, a very good discussion. There was the request for any update on the RFP from DLS, and as we reported at the end of October, all the bids were supposed to be in anticipation of the contract decision for which to consultant by November 22nd. So that still has not occurred yet. So we're continuing to track that. That was pretty straightforward. Also with some discussions and encouragement from the presidents to be the advocates for additional funding for higher ed, of course, which we already are. So we have our meeting. MHEC has our first budget hearing with Department of Budget and Management coming up tomorrow. It'll be a virtual meeting. But again, you know, we're looking at our budget of over $700 million, of which 693 of it are passed through. So our agency runs on about 7 million with all the other things. So there's a lot going on in terms of the budget world right now, and we anticipate a good year. I'll just say it that way. Very hopeful for that. Other thing I'd report on is we're just getting on all the preliminary, not the final numbers for fall enrollment. Dr. Smertz has put together an overview which indicates the total enrollment of undergrad and grads within the state of Maryland is down 3.4%, which is the national average is 2.3 down. Undergrad enrollment 5.8 down, national of 3.2. Interesting, the graduate enrollment is increasing. The national level 2.1, but Maryland's is 4.6, so it's as a percentage 3 times higher than the national average. An indication across the board that the first-time full-time enrollment is up in all the sectors, which is, I think, a pretty good mark of the intent of the students to get back into college in the first time full-time. So that's a different mark than we see at the national level. We can feed out as we get some more final numbers in terms of looking at the breakdown at the community colleges versus private versus public 4 years. So we'll be getting that dashboard out to you pretty soon. Any questions on any of that? Okay, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Secretary Fielder. We have no public comments today, so I'll just move right to the approval of the minutes, and we have 2 sets of minutes to approve. Our regular session from October 27th and then our closed session on that same day. So let me get the minutes on the floor if somebody could make a motion to approve the minutes. Commissioner Williams approved, and could I have a second?
I'll second.
Serrano. So are there any corrections, additions to the minutes that anybody has? Did I hear somebody? Okay, so I think we're good. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Abstaining? All right, minutes are approved. So let's turn now to committee meetings. And again, I don't know which committees have met, so let me just go through the list. Commissioner Boyd, is there anything on the Education Policy Committee?
The Educational Policy Committee has had several meetings, and we do have a couple of things on our agenda as we close out the current year. We're scheduled to meet this coming Monday to review and discuss issues related to the exceptional hearing that's been scheduled for the 30th of the month that the chair just mentioned. Secondly, the presentation and discussion of House Bill 460 on the Transfer with Success Act, that's going to be rescheduled for early December. So that constitutes our agenda at this point.
And thank you very much, Commissioner Boyd. And Commissioner Coleman, on the Outreach Grants and Financial Assistance Committee, is there a report?
Yes, briefly, we met last week, I think it was, the Outreach Grant and Financial Aid Committee met. And I want to thank Commissioner Jackson and Adekoya for being part of this committee. And I also want to thank all the ones from the grant, the Outreach and Financial Aid for attending the meeting and giving us some input. A couple of things in the Outreach area, they have a new theme for this academic year, and the theme is student success with less debt. And their new logo and new tagline is engage, inform, and support. They have added several new websites. They have 500, I think they said they added about 11 more websites for different areas. And they updated the MHET video production by Maryland Public Television for MHET. And they are writing new updates on their podcast that include many, many different areas for the outreach. They also have developed a brochure online for all high school counselors. And they have a couple of ongoing projects. For instance, they have one for the Y of Baltimore. They have signed up about 6,000 students for 6 different schools in Baltimore. These are first generation students, a chance to achieve higher education and different things like that. Also in the grant area, they have about 80 different grants for eight different grant programs, which is really quite a bit. And also I discovered that we do not have a director for the grant and the outreach at this time, but we have a competent staff who's continuing to work in that area. And I just want to give a shout out to Rhonda Wallow, who's been very, very helpful in terms of arranging the meetings and kind of assisting me with this since I'm new, along with Commissioner Jackson. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. And before I move on to the next report, are there any questions or comments regarding Commissioner Boyd's report and Commissioner Coleman's? Okay. And Mr. Newman, any report from the Finance and Operations Committee?
Only that we're still making progress on filling our agency vacancies. Every position that is vacant is in some portion of the process of being recruited and getting someone hired into those positions. And also the comments that the secretary made earlier about it's budget season, and we're meeting with DBM to discuss our budget, and then they'll be moving forward to make decisions for what will be in the budget for fiscal 2023.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Newman. Any questions for Mr. Newman?
Mary Pat, it's not a question, but I'd like to compliment finance. This would be the first time in 3, maybe 4 years that every single position that we had that was vacant due to somebody taking a job outside of the department are now unfrozen. And that's a significant step forward because DBM uses the vacancy rate to help with budgets reduction. So this is a really good thing that got unfrozen so we can move back toward full staffing. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Commissioner McDaniels is not with us today to report on the DEI committee, but Commissioner Serrano and Coleman, I think you're on that committee. Do you have anything that you can report?
I know that we'll have a meeting scheduled for the early part of next month.
Okay.
And we have some material to review and discuss at that time. That's all I have.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Serena has something.
Yeah, I think I can. We had our initial meeting. It was kind of an icebreaker, and then kind of talked about some ideas of what we want to do, and then we had some forms. I think Dr. Schmertz sent to us, and so we are reviewing that and preparing for our next follow-up meeting. So hopefully we'll have some fruit to deliver in the next meeting. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Dr. Dow, let me turn things over to you to introduce the reports, the 3 reports that are before us.
Absolutely, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. Good afternoon. I'm going to just turn the time over to Trish Gordon-McCown. She is our Director for Academic Affairs. She has 3 quarterly reports to share with you. They are in the Commission book. They're very detailed, and so she'll provide a few highlights for you. So Trish, off to you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dow. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, we can, Trish, thank you.
Great. So as Dr. Dow stated, I will report on the 3 quarterly reports for academic affairs. The first report is in your commission book, starts on page 6. And the first report is for institutions of higher education program review. These are the secretary actions for quarter 2, which is April 1st through June 30th. And this report will outline the reporting period actions under Komar 13B 0201 and 13B 0203. We'll just go through some highlights of this report, and then I'll stop and see if you have any questions or comments on the report. For those of you that may be not as familiar with this report, this is for our in and out of state colleges and universities, public and private. This report will also cover one thing that we did add this quarter for your information. On page 7 or page 8 in the commission book, we added online registration activity, which are institutions that are out of state that are offering fully online distance education programs. So you'll find that information on page 8 of your book, I believe. As we stated, these actions have occurred during quarter 2. And I'll stop right there and see if any of you have any questions or comments for quarter 2 report for institutions of higher education.
So any questions that anyone has? So Trish, I think you're good to go forward.
Okay. All right, we'll keep going to the second report, which is our report on career workforce education. This is our private career school unit. These are secretary actions again for quarter 2, which are April 1st through June 30th of 2021. This report outlines the Secretary of Higher Education actions that have occurred during this period. There were a total of 98 actions from this unit. And the actions are listed on page 23 of your commission book. Within these actions, you will find that there was a number of actions taken for certificate renewals. And these are institutions that have already had initial approval, and their renewal period, the renewal was due. So the institutions were reviewed and granted another certificate of approval to operate in the state of Maryland. You'll see those actions in your commission book. And forgive me about page numbers. I hope that you all can follow along behind me, but that's starting on page 25 of your commission book. I will stop right there and see if you have any questions or comments regarding the career and workforce education private career school actions.
Any questions at all?
Yeah, hey, Trish, what's the total number of that group? It's around 150?
Total active institutions, Secretary?
Yes.
We're looking at about 145, 147 active institutions.
Okay,
Total.
thank you.
Okay. And just for the record, this unit operates under section 13B0101. Okay.
So, Dr. Gordon-McCown, before you go on, let me just ask two general questions, but it somewhat goes back to the first report. What leads to a change in code, and what causes an institution to withdraw a program?
The change of code, are you referring to a specific action?
No, it's just that, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but there were a number that was a code change, and I just wondered what leads to that.
So the code changes that you'll see in some of the actions that can apply for, that can relate to either a title change or a minor, a non-substantial modification change to a program.
Okay, all right, thank you.
If I can add on that, so some of those code changes, so we lean heavily on federal coding nomenclature, particularly when it comes to classification of identification of programs, SIP codes, essentially. So the federal government issues out a long list of codes to use to classify academic programs. And so we use those codes. Every 10 years, the federal government updates those codes to reflect new programming and industry changes. And so in 2020, the federal government updated the codes. And so we gave the institutions an opportunity to also update their codes with our agency in light of that. So we've been doing a lot of work to make sure that those codes are right. Because as you've probably seen in our duplication analyses and when we talk about academic program review, we lean heavily on those codes to better understand the nature of a particular academic program. So some of that increase may be, is definitely a reflection of the new federal codes or the updating of the federal codes from U.S. Department of Ed.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Dow. And then when an institution withdraws a program proposal, I mean, is it just that they change their mind about offering it something, or are they getting too much pushback? What leads to that?
Okay, good question. So for the withdrawal of a program, sometimes we receive proposals and then the institution may withdraw the proposal. So that can be that's a simple example of one. And the other withdrawal could be well, we have two different sections. So the other withdrawal could be that they have suspended a program and then decided not to continue the program after that 3-year period. And they've decided that they no longer want that program to continue. So those are basically the two actions that you're going to see in that category. Dr. Dow, did I miss anything there?
Yep. Sometimes campuses will also withdraw a proposal or requested action because we've deemed it incomplete and we've said you need to go back and revisit your proposal. It doesn't meet statutory or regulatory requirements. That may be another reason for a withdrawal of a proposal. But just as Trish said, there's kind of two different withdrawals. One is the withdrawal of a proposal. Another is essentially the suspension of an academic program which I realized we may need to clean up some of that language in these reports to make that clear distinction.
Great, good. Thank you very much. Anybody else have anything that you'd like clarification on?
Yes, there's a question in chat. Trish, if you could handle that.
Sure. Commissioner Adekoya, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name, is asking about clarification on the notices of deficiency and the training provider questionnaire. First, with the notice of deficiency, in this particular case, we issued that notice because there were some transactions that happened at a long-standing institution. There was the director had passed away, the director/owner, and the private career school unit issued a notice of deficiency because of the staffing deficit. And then two, after that owner was no longer present, the financial guarantee became inactive. So the financial guarantee, the institution needed to secure another guarantee to operate. And there was a little bit of problem with the transition between the previous owner and the new owner and the new director of the school. So the private career school unit helped to shepherd the institution through that process.
And just real quickly, and Dr. Dow or Patricia, if you clarify also that the financial guarantee is a guarantee by the institution that if for whatever reason they had to close, that all of the tuition and fees the students had paid in would be covered.
Right. Yeah.
We've had to do that a number of times in the last 6 years.
Correct. Yeah, we require both by statute and by regulation that schools, particularly for-profit institutions, need to hold a financial guarantee equal to the non-Title IV tuition liability. And so that provides the student protections that if a school does need to close, students who are particularly midway through a program either have the option of a refund, they can also transfer, but there's funding available to support those students that may get caught up in a school closure. And so those bonds are really important to us. It can either be a bond or a letter of credit, but we make an active attempt to make sure we have those bonds ready to go should a school close. And schools close for a number of reasons. We've seen schools close because a lease, the owner of a building says, I'm no longer going to lease with you, and then the school no longer has a place. So even in the best intentions, there can be some negative outcomes.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for those clarifications.
And I think she had a second question about the training provider questionnaire. And the training provider questionnaire is a form that we ask entities to complete if they're contemplating or proposing a new institution or new training program. It gives the unit a chance to preview the proposed institution or program and determine if they require approval from the Secretary of Higher Education, if they're exempt from the regulations for private career school, or if it's training we don't regulate. And then we give them very specific steps to take in order to move forward in the process or to go ahead and continue with their training. Because if they're not regulated or exempt from our regulations, generally that's when they're offering continuing education or a type of training that Komar does not cover.
Great, thank you.
I hope that answers your questions.
Anything else that anybody has? Then Dr. Gordon McCown, I think you can move on.
Okay, so we just have one more report. The final report is for our Veterans Education and Training Benefits. This is our unit under Veterans Affairs, also known as the Maryland State Approving Agency for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. So again, from last report, they work under a contract with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs to approve institution and programs that accept veterans education benefits from beneficiaries. So this report is for our Q2, which again is April 1st through June 30th of 21. There were a total of 321 actions. And just to be clear, these actions take place under the federal regulations, the Code of Federal Regulations. So that's why you see those CFR references and the US codes there. And also to clarify, the federal fiscal year quarters operate a quarter ahead of our state fiscal year and those quarters. So I hope that's not too confusing. This report starts on page 30 of your commission book, and it outlines a number of actions related to the approvals for new programs proposed for veterans education benefits and training, as well as modifications to those approvals. This unit also does visits to facilities, so you'll see that on page 31. And just to clarify, if you don't recall from last time, on the final page of this report, you will see the definitions, which will explain the programs that are approved under this report. So they look at more than just the colleges and universities and private career schools. There's also programs for approval under apprenticeship, on-the-job training, licensing and certification, as well as flight programs. So those definitions are on the final page of the report. I'll stop right there if you have any questions or comments regarding the quarterly report for the Maryland State Approving Agency, Veterans Affairs.
Thank you. Any questions, Secretary Fielder?
No, mine's not a question. Again, it's another compliment. About a year ago, we recruited to return to our agency Everett Jackson, who had left, who had been with the MHEC working for Trish before, and he went to DC to head up their Veterans Affairs unit. We were able to recruit him back, and he's done a fantastic job, very transparently working with one of our community colleges on aviation programs. That, for those that don't realize it, all the aviation programs that come through Veteran Affairs come through our department, and it requires a tremendous amount of compliance and regulatory audits and so forth. And I just compliment him. You know, this unit has continued to receive the highest ratings at a federal level. So thank you, Trish.
Terrific. Thank you for those comments, Secretary Fielder. Anyone else? Anything on any, not just this last report, any questions at all you have about the three reports or comments? Okay. So I think the last item on our agenda is to approve the proposed amendment to Komar regarding the Workforce Development Sequence Scholarship. And Ms. Thomas, I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Donna Thomas. I'm Director for the Office of Student Financial Assistance. On page 33, you will find the proposed amendments to Komar for the Workforce Development Sequence Scholarship Program. This program is intended to provide financial support to students enrolled in a group of 9 credit courses at a community college. And the courses that they are taking must lead to job preparation, or it must be in a registered apprenticeship program, licensure certification, or job skill enhancement. This particular scholarship program is administered directly through the institution, where MHEC's role is that we identify the allocations annually for the community colleges, and then the community colleges actually identify the students who are eligible to receive the award. During the 2021 session, the legislator enacted House Bill 905 and Senate Bill 845, which altered the definition of an eligible student to include students enrolled directly in registered apprenticeship programs that partner with a community college. Therefore, this particular legislative change expanded the eligibility requirements of the program, allowed greater access to individuals who are in apprenticeship programs that have partnerships with the community colleges. Additionally, there were amendments that were made to the regulations. Those amendments include minor changes to existing language that was in the regulations at that time, as well as changing the dates in regulations with regards to the annual allocation amount, and deleting several unnecessary obsolete references. The proposed regulatory amendments have been approved for legality by MHEC's Assistant Attorney General as required by the Maryland Administrative Procedure Act, and they are enclosed again on page 33 for your review. Upon your approval, the regulations and regulatory amendments will be submitted to the Legislative Joint Committee on Administrative, Executive, and Legislative Review, better known as AELR, after which they are submitted to the Division of State Documents for publication in the Maryland Register. At this time, I'll proceed with reading the recommendation. It is recommended that the Commission approves the publication in the Maryland Register, the enclosed proposed regulatory amendments to the Workforce Development Sequence Scholarship Program, and authorizes its Assistant Attorney General to make non-substantive edits to the proposed regulations to conform to the stylistic and formatting requirements of AELR and DSD. Happy to take any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Now, before I ask for a motion, does anybody have any questions? Then if I could have a motion, and the recommendation is on page 33 of your book, if I could have a motion to approve. Commissioner Serrano, did I see your hand go up?
No.
No.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Adekoya, do you want to move the recommendation? Okay, could I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Commissioner Coleman. Any other questions or comments before we take a vote? All in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, so I thank you all for a very efficient meeting. We not only accomplished this in an hour, but we did it in just a little bit over 30 minutes. Does anybody have any other business to raise?
Just the announcement of the next meeting, which is, I always think it's better at the end of a meeting, because if you announce when the next meeting is as the first agenda item, there's no point in having that meeting.
So next meeting, not the special meeting, but the next meeting in December
Yes,
is
December 15th.
I'm just looking quickly at my notes. December 15th at 1 o'clock. So I encourage everybody to make certain that's on your calendar. And again, just a reminder about the special meeting on the 30th at 10 a.m. And I think Selma sent materials out to all of us, so we should have what we need to get ready for that, or at least preliminarily. And just a quick wish to all of you for a great Thanksgiving. If anybody's traveling, please be safe. But most of all, just enjoy the time, whether you're doing it in a smaller group or a larger group with family and friends, but enjoy the holiday. And so I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Adekoya moved that we adjourn. I don't think anybody objects. Anybody want to second quickly, and I will end the meeting.
Commissioner Boyd, I second.
Thanks so much. All right, everyone, take care. We are adjourned.
Safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.